A few weeks ago, I released a video where I talk about my 5 reasons why I personally am not going to use merino t-shirts for traveling anymore, and I will link this video down below. But to my surprise, when I returned from my trip to Spain, there were already more than 350 comments on this video. And I was extremely surprised by how many people actually had similar experiences than me, because usually when I say something less than stellar about merino wool, many people will just say, oh, you're using the wrong brands or you just did not do it correctly. And even the ones who disagreed with me gave an educated reply and shared their experiences, so that was very interesting for me. And all the questions and comments basically evolved around 2 different topics. The first one was sustainability and that merino wool is the best option, which from my perspective as someone who was working in the textile industry, I may have to disagree. And the second one was, which t-shirts or fabrics do I recommend for travel? So I hope that you all will forgive me that I decided to just quickly record this video instead of answering all of you individually. So for obvious reasons, this video is not sponsored. I actually don't do paid videos. I prefer to be the poor traveler who eats ramen noodles in the hotel room instead of sacrificing my values. So that being said, let's jump into the first topic, sustainability. Many people mentioned that they prefer merino wool because it's a natural fiber, and for them this is more important than the downsides. And while I think that considering the impact on the environment is an awesome thing to do, in another video I already commented how sustainability is not part of my decision to buy clothes. Because from my perspective, as someone who worked in the technical side of the textile industry, there are no sustainable options at the moment. If you ask me, there's not a single fabric, and this also includes wool. And I always love how this whole greenwashing happens, and I also love how marketing and textile brands usually jump on all the positives and totally downplay or never even mention all the negatives around it. And this is also the same case in wool, in my opinion. In the case of wool, the claim is usually that it's a natural fiber, that it's renewable, and that you could even decompose it in your garden, if you would want to, contrary to some synthetic materials. And that is true, but there's a but, and it's actually a big but, and my husband said I'm not allowed to sing this song. But in my opinion, this claim is partially true only for raw wool. But what you are wearing is not raw wool. And even if the animals have been treated well and have been raised mulesing-free, then the industrial farming still has a huge impact on our planet. There's the huge land use, the emission gases, the water pollution, all those things. But we have to look at the full life cycle, and those chemical processes turn something that is potentially low impact into just another high impact material. And if you're interested, I will link a document below where it talks a little bit more about how wool is treated to be wearable, because there are several treatments. For example, the first step is that the wool obviously has to be washed because there's lots of dirt and grease inside the raw wool. And during this process, they use large amounts of water and chemicals. And in the Western world, especially in Europe, most companies cannot really afford the cost of the wastewater treatments. So they do what they always do, they go to other parts of this world where there are lower environmental standards. So if you think that I travel a lot, I'm actually nothing compared to my clothes. And if something cannot be 100% produced in your home country, which I would be surprised if it really was at a reasonable price, then that should already be a little bit of a warning sign. But back to the merino wool. There is a process called superwash, which basically makes the wool washable and also more soft. And during this process, the wool is usually bathed in chlorine and then it's covered with a polymer. So basically, all the wool fibers are covered in plastic. And then afterwards, they turn this into a yarn. They have to still dye it, treat it with all those things that clothes and fabrics are treated with. And this whole package is still called 100% wool. So you basically end up with a t-shirt where the natural fibers are not really natural anymore. They're basically covered in plastic, and it's just as harmful to the environment as other products are. And in my opinion, I would not bury a merino t-shirt in my garden. And often they also then mix merino wool with other synthetic fabrics to make it more durable. So the end product, in my opinion, is not really natural anymore, and it's also not very sustainable. The only sustainable option, in my opinion, that we have is to buy as little as possible and wear it really until it breaks. So you still have a huge impact on the planet, but it's minimized. And that is why, for me personally, the sustainability of merino wool is even worse than other fabrics, just for the fact that they always tend to break down and get holes and that they're not very durable and that I really have to replace them all the time. And once they start to blend merino wool with synthetic materials, in my opinion, the natural appeal is totally gone anyways. And this t-shirt that I'm going to show you in a minute, that's made of 60% recycled polyester, was probably made from the trash that was produced during raising the sheep. We don't know. And also some people mentioned how they like bamboo and materials like this, but they are also not natural fabrics. They are actually semi-synthetics. They are based on natural fibers, but they go through so many chemical processes that the end result has nothing to do with a natural product anymore. So honestly, there is just so much to say about sustainability and the impact of our clothes on the environment and how different fabrics are actually made. So let me know if you would be interested in the lessons that my husband and I learned during our time in the industry. The next common question was, which fabrics do I recommend or which t-shirts do I wear? And I already talked a little bit about this in a video that I did about my favorite fabrics, and I will also link it below. But to sum things up, at the end of the day, I personally prefer durable fabrics. And I really know that my situation is special. I don't have an apartment anymore. I basically travel full-time out of a carry-on sized luggage. So I don't really have much space to leave a big stack of clothes behind. So basically, I wear a very limited wardrobe every day, and my wardrobe has to be strong enough to deal with that. And one commenter said that in the case of merino wool, I let perfect become the enemy of the good. But honestly, for me, the durability of merino wool is just not good enough. I cannot afford to have garments that develop holes all the time. I want to have t-shirts that I can wash any way I want. And then I honestly prefer to have one more durable t-shirt with me that I can wear all the time. And another thing that I always notice is that when people think of synthetics, like a polyester t-shirt, we usually think of all those cheap, low-quality garments that the market is flooded with. Like the stuff that they hand out for team t-shirts, for example. And I totally agree that stuff stinks. Even on me, it stinks in no time. I don't like wearing it, it's terrible. I totally agree that it feels like wearing a plastic bag. But not all synthetic materials are equal. And I like very much that materials, especially synthetics, have evolved a lot during the last few years. And especially in Europe, there have been lots of developments for high-quality synthetic materials. The t-shirt that I'm wearing right now, for example, is 65% recycled polyester, and the other 35% is viscose by Lenzing. Lenzing is actually an Austrian company. And the other t-shirt that I recently purchased, because all of my merino t-shirts broke on me, is this one from Salewa. Salewa is an Italian brand from Südtirol, from the mountains. And they actually developed this t-shirt for long-distance hiking in the Dolomites, where you cannot really wash it. So it's a blend of different materials. It's called their DRYTON material, but they have the DRYTON out of different blends. But the one that I have here is for the largest part recycled polyester, a little bit of unrecycled polyester, and I think it's also with some tencel fibers. And honestly, it feels like a normal soft t-shirt, and I like it very much because it has this kind of pretty little texture to it. I don't know if you can see it. So it feels like a normal t-shirt and it looks like a normal t-shirt, and what they also did is that they treated it with some silver to avoid it to get smelly. And I honestly just wore this t-shirt for 45 days every day when I walked on the Camino de Santiago. It never really smelled. I usually just aired it out every night when I put on my sleep shirt. And honestly, if I washed it once or twice a week during my walking time, that was a lot. But when I washed it at night, it was usually dry in the morning. And I even had to throw all my things into the dryer one day on the Camino because we had a run-in with some bedbugs. And so we washed everything for over 1 hour on the hottest temperature and then also dried it on hot. And I am not sure if my expensive merino wool t-shirts would have survived that treatment. So even after 45 days of really extensive use, it still looks like new for the most part, apart from the logos coming off. But there are no loose fibers, no holes, nothing snatched, there is no pilling. And I think I could not have tested this t-shirt more than wearing it walking 800 kilometers through Spain. So with a t-shirt like this that is soft and quick drying and doesn't smell, I really get all the benefits from merino, plus also the benefits from synthetics, that it's very durable. And I get all of this at a cheaper price point. I mean, these t-shirts are also not cheap. I think normally they're like 45 euros, but I managed to get it on sale for 35 euros, so it's a lot cheaper than merino wool t-shirts. And maybe it's a little bit less fashionable, but honestly, I don't care. I always think it's very funny how people think that we in Europe, we dress so elegantly, where I always feel that 99% of the time we're just extremely casual. And there's always this joke that you can tell people from Austria and Germany when we travel because we always wear hiking gear. But I will keep testing those two t-shirts and I will give you an update on my regular series where I talk about how travel gear held up and what broke. So consider subscribing to this channel if you don't want to miss that. So my favorite type of fabric is something durable. There's lots of different options for durable fabrics, but I usually go more towards the synthetic fabrics. I also usually have some cheap, very thin cotton t-shirts because they dry fast and they're very comfortable to wear. But that is just what works for me, and from my experience as a long-term traveler with a very limited wardrobe. And as always, things that work for me may not work for you, so you have to define for yourself and test it out, unfortunately, what is good enough for you to travel with. But my main recommendation, not just for travel, but just for life in general, is to find a few pieces that you love wearing and then just wear them all the time. For years until they fall apart, as boring as it is. And when it comes to t-shirts for travel, in my opinion, use what you already have. The best travel clothes may already be in your wardrobe. If you already have something that is durable, comfortable, maybe even dries fast, then just use what you have. A t-shirt will never make or break your trip. And don't think for a second that you will be able to enjoy your trip more or are only a good one-bag traveler if you buy a 90 euro t-shirt. In my opinion, that's neglectable. And if you think that wearing t-shirts and traveling with a backpack is for children, then just please go do something else. Just because I do things my way does not mean you're not allowed to do things your way. So if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to my monthly newsletter or to my channel. And other than that, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!